amazing. You have seen the material that we have shared with you. I don't know if you were able to read her articles. I was amazed with them. It was really inspiring. And let me tell you something really quick about Vanessa. She's a performance artist, educator, fairy goddess, mermaid, gangsta for the revolution. And she's from South Central Los Angeles, and loves to be silly, whimsical, imaginative, weird, loving, and sexual in public every chance she gets. And we are so excited, Vanessa. I think
it's true. Yes. My poor partner.
That's amazing. We all want to be like that. Thank you. And Vanessa, it's gonna leading us tonight in a conversation about power, freedom, joyful abandon that you invite and center in your life when you choose to reclaim your ugly. And ugly meaning uplift, glorify, love yourself. And I think with that we can start with Vanessa.
Oh, should we start with the bell?
Yes.
Let's have a bell to start with. Just we use the mindful bell just to help us center ourselves and get ready to have some deep listening. This whole project is coming out of the mindfulness practices of Thich Nhat Hanh, is a Vietnamese Buddhist monk, and the reason that we were led to this is because of his teachings on really understanding what's true, and through understanding, then learning how to love. And that until we know what's really true, we can't really do anything about it. So these webinars are about learning what's really true. And so that's why we practice. So I'm going to invite the bell 3 times, and we can just breathe together and settle ourselves wherever we are. Vanessa? I mute myself.
Okay. Thank you so much for the beautiful power of vibration. That felt good. I kind of wanted to keep going, but maybe that's my shyness. I'm in the middle of. So I'm really excited that you all have me. I'm so grateful to be able to have this conversation with you all. I feel so blessed and fortunate that the world is ready to have conversations about ugliness and uglification and how it's taking over, how it takes over our lives in really unfortunate ways, and how to rebel and reject against it. And I also want to thank you for your courage for being a part of this. Talking about ugliness is vulnerable, and it's risky, and it's scary, and it's a thing that we don't talk about often in the world in a way that's like really rooted in authenticity or love or care for other people. Talking about ugliness is, I think, difficult, especially for those of us who have been uglified throughout the course of our lives. We have memories, deeply traumatic memories of being bullied and being excluded and not being welcomed or loved or valued in our community because of how we look. For some of us, sometimes it forces us to engage with our insecurities about ourselves and what people think about us, how people perceive us. I know sometimes when my fear of feeling ugly or my experience and history of uglification comes up, it's terrifying for me to leave the house. I'm afraid that I'm going to experience the same bullying that I might have experienced as a child or on other occasions of our lives. It can make someone feel nervous about going in for a job interview or making new friends or simply having connection when you have a history of being rejected. It's so easy to lean into ugliness to validate the harmful things that happen to us. Maybe we had an ex who cheated on us and broke up with us. And it's so easy to go back to, well, maybe if I lost some weight, or maybe if I was more beautiful, or maybe if I was this, or if I was that, somebody would love me more or treat me better. Sometimes those of us who've been uglified in the world might just simply be out on the streets. Somebody's walking by us laughing, pulls at your heartstrings because you're accustomed to being the person being laughed at. It makes us question things about ourselves, even like when we think about talking about ugly or the fear of being ugly or being perceived as ugly or other people being ugly, you can't help but wonder, like, am I the person? Like, you have to ask, do you do that? Are you someone who treats other people differently because you read them as ugly? Are you someone who judges people based off of how they look or how they exist in their body as they move through the world? Are you someone who feels validation in not looking like someone else? At least I don't have the same amount of wrinkles as them. At least I'm under a size 20. At least I can still move my body in this way. Like, ugly is such a huge, big topic that impacts just the way we see ourselves and each other. And it's scary. And I think another thing that's hard about it, like really leaning into this conversation, is that when we talk about ugly and when we talk about who experiences uglification in the world, we kind of do it in this way that is a little bit like not direct. Instead, we focus on beauty. We have a culture that is obsessed with people being beautiful, and we treat beauty as an act of liberation. We treat beauty as something that is connected to our confidence or our self-esteem. When we talk about ugliness in our usual feminist dialogues, we think about oppressive beauty standards. We think about where they came from and how they hurt us. But in this conversation, our goal is not to think about beauty standards. Our goal is not to think about what beauty does to us or how we think about it. We also talk about desirability politics and what it means to decolonizes our preferences. As you can see, I'm a little kinky. I do have fetishes, but that's not the point of this talk right now. It's easy to conflate beauty and self-esteem and desirability. I've done it. I've dedicated hours throughout the course of my life, or I should say hours daily, to putting on makeup and getting expensive haircuts and wearing certain outfits, not to be beautiful per se, but to have access to the way the world treats you when people perceive you to be beautiful, to be able to move through the world and not be targeted because of what people think about my appearance, to get a job, to get good money, to be respected in the workplace or amongst my family, So it's so easy to think about beauty as self-esteem. And I even think about how we teach children about beauty. We tell children that everybody is beautiful. Everybody is gorgeous, to ignore what other people have to say about your body and lean into your self-esteem. But the thing about this topic of beauty in this way is that not everybody can lean into beauty. That's not the word. The word is not everybody can. There are some bodies that cannot access beauty in this society, no matter what, no matter how much they love themselves, no matter how well they treat themselves, no matter how much they invest in liking who they are and liking their bodies, they're still going to be excluded from beauty and what beauty does for us in this world. And it's that exclusion that makes this conversation really important to me. It's the fact that when we tell people that beauty and ugly are subjective or simply an opinion, or it's important to clap back, it doesn't address the actual systemic consequences of uglification in our society. It doesn't address the fact that people experience real severe pain and hurt and harm because of the ways that they've been uglified in society. And I don't want to hate on people or strategies or practices around affirming beauty. I think it's important to like yourself. I think it's important to like the way you look. When you enjoy your body, when you exist in your body, you get to have a little bit more pleasure, I think. You get to engage with yourself differently. You get to treat your body as a treat and an opportunity to explore the deliciousness of this universe. And I think that in a world that like makes so many people feel so bad for who they are, it's important to find any way you possibly can to love yourself and to feel valid in your looks. I do this all the time. I'm writing poems about myself being a beautiful Black plum and being plucked from trees and eaten by other beautiful Black plums. It makes me feel good in the world, and we deserve to feel good no matter what. So I'm all about that. But I also think that when we start talking about ugly, we need to really, really, really look at it from a systemic lens, from a lens of systemic oppression. And I think when we start looking at it from a lens of systemic oppression, from an issue of power and privilege and people being targeted, it changes the way that we engage with ugliness and uglification. So when I think about ugliness, I don't think about it as a static thing. I don't think about ugliness as a description. I don't believe that ugliness is a noun or an adjective. I think it's a verb. I think it's a thing that we do to each other for a reason and for a purpose. I don't think that there is any body that is actually ugly, or even any thing that is actually ugly, or even any place that is actually ugly, or even any characteristics. Even the people that I cannot stand, oh my God, they hurt my feelings. These are not people that I'm going to call ugly, and nor am I going to call their behaviors ugly. But I am going to say that there is something inside of me, or something inside of the world, inside of our social constructs, that lead us to think about other people as ugly. And it happens for a very intentional reason and purpose. So I want to tell you a little story to kind of ground you in this conversation. This time last year in November, I was on the internet and I was just, scrolling through Facebook, feeling good. I had just went to a reading and performed a poem, and I knew that I was so cute at that reading. I loved the way that I was dressed. I loved the energy that I was giving. I was excited and proud of myself. And then I saw that somebody uploaded a picture of me on the internet. And I was like, ooh, I can't wait to go see it, because I know it's going to be a picture of me being beautiful at that reading. And I was shocked, because that is not what it was. It was a picture of me from about 10 years ago when I was 26 years old, teaching at a community college. And I was beaming and shining and so excited about this opportunity to be an actual teacher, especially given that I was so young. But the man who uploaded the picture actually uploaded it as a meme. And what he said was me looking for baddies to attend this concert, and these are the kind of people that respond. And the joke was that someone like me, who looked like me, would have the audacity to even think that I could attend this person's event or sit in their VIP area, which is what they were looking for, baddies to hang out with rappers in the VIP area. And it was shocking to me. I didn't feel hurt right away. I didn't feel sad, which I was grateful for, because it let me know that I did a lot of healing from my experiences being uglified as a child. But I felt this deep sense of rage and anger that someone would take this very beautiful, very sweet picture of innocent baby me, who was so excited to be in the world and so excited to share, and objectify it in this way, to make it a joke, and not just a joke, to make it a warning. The thing that also really pushed me over the edge with, this is the part that hurt me, was that the majority of people who liked this picture were other women. More so, they were other women of color. And even deeper, they were other Black women. And I just kept thinking, like, how is this okay? How are these people okay with this? You know, so I reached out to them. Oh, and they were in my hometown of Oakland, which is where I live right now. So, I reached out to him to ask about it. And his response was to tell me that he did not know that I was a real person. He thought that I was just some picture from the internet that he found when Googling ugly Black women. He Googled ugly Black women. And I want to show you what came up when he Googled this picture. So I'm going to go to the share. I'm going to go to Google Chrome and go to these presentations. And here it is. Can you all see this, what I'm looking at?
Not yet. Did you
Not
push
yet.
share? Did you push share at the bottom? Yeah, there we go.
Here we are. So let me move this. So this picture right here is the Google search from this time last year. Thank Black lesbian Jesus, it has changed. It is completely different. But this is what happened when you Googled ugly Black women. You found this picture of this amazing comedian who has a history of being targeted and made fun of on social media. You find this picture of sweet little itty bitty baby me. And you find these other Black women who are maybe going through periods of distress and struggle, or who are just trying to show off their flyness. Somebody had the audacity to upload these images of us for some kind of purpose, and then somebody else had the audacity to Google search it for a purpose. So I read the picture, I read the video, I read the article that hosted my picture, and it was an article written by supposedly a Black man. I do not believe this, but he was saying that it was a warning to other Black men to start dating non-Black women because Black women were so ugly. He talked about how we were not beautiful compared to other women, including other women of color, and also how our personalities were so unattractive. His argument was that if you go to college, you will find more beautiful women, and you don't have to be limited to your choice. And so looking at this and exploring this and thinking about it just really had me thinking, this is something that needs to be talked about. Like, this is something that needs to be talked about much more significantly, much more overtly, and with a lot less fear than I think we move when having these conversations. Let's see, is my picture back or is it still sharing? Oh, stop share, there we go. Yes, so it made me think, like, we really need to think a little bit more critically about what ugliness means to us in this world, and why is it so critical and take up space and allows people to engage so cruelly. And so I started really kind of thinking about how this situation played out and what his picture meant. The first thing that I noticed was that he felt like because I looked a certain way, it was okay to target me. It was okay to laugh at me. It was okay to create jokes around my face or my body. But on top of that, it's also okay to create jokes or laugh at people who have similar features or other features that we culturally recognize as ugly or unbeautiful in this world. And when I think about systems of oppression uses certain traits or values that people have to validate their oppression. You know, there is an athlete, a bodybuilder who's out, and I don't remember her name, but she's talking about feeling valid in shaming fat people, like actual fat shaming, to get them to lose weight so that they can close their mouths and stop being lazy. And she's not really talking about health. She's not really talking, and even still, I think it's nobody's business to judge anybody else's health. I'd rather have happiness and liberation than somebody else saying I'm happy any day. But she's not talking about like actual wellness. She is talking about changing the way people look because she feels like it's stressing and toxic and taxing on the world. She feels like it's all right to punish people for not meeting standards of fitness or thinness. We talk about people, like I think about people in my community, in my neighborhood. I live in a very heavily gentrified neighborhood, and around the corner from my house last year again was a huge homeless encampment. There were about 150 people. Folks were providing them with food on the daily basis. There was actual community happening. And late at night, the police came and destroyed all of their belongings, set things on fire, put things in trash bags, trash cans. They even had a restroom there for them to use. The restroom was taken away. It was horrific and painful to watch, but it had no purpose other than to beautify our town, to remove what our community thinks of as ugly. And we have uglified homeless people. We have a long history of uglifying people who experience economic distress. You can think about it like as we move through history and we think about laws such as the ugly laws, which I'll talk about a little bit later, but from the 1880s to the 1970s, there were these laws in many parts of our country that literally said if somebody was unappealing or disgusting or not wanted on the streets, they could be arrested, they could be fined, they could be criminally charged simply for the way that they looked. And the majority of the people that were targeted at this time were people who were financially and economically insecure, who were disabled, who were panhandlers, who were sleeping on the streets. These people were arrested for having a lack of resource, but they were also punished for being public and being seen while being uglified. So they didn't get to be human. And I think it's similar in this conversation with what this man did. He said that because people look a certain way, they get to be judged, they get to be targeted. But it goes even further. He didn't just laugh at me. He was saying that because I look the way that I look, I did not deserve access into the world. I did not deserve, and more specifically, I did not deserve access into his party or his VIP lounge. And that really, really, really took me somewhere because it's what oppression does. Oppression says that some people and some bodies do not get to access the world because of whatever way that we're judging them. And same with uglification. Some people, because of how they look, don't get to go into parties and feel welcome and feel seen. Some people historically did not. There was a thing called the paper bag test that was happening when Black colleges first started to be created. People who could access these colleges, or who could join our historical sororities, or who could live in certain neighborhoods, or even be welcomed in certain churches, had to pass these tests. Their skin had to be lighter than a paper bag. There was like a hanging comb test. They had to be able to have the comb go through their hair without a snag. So again, it has nothing to do with the person's actual personality or qualifications. It's really about looks and what we conflate with looks. And in our society and culture, this conflation of how people look with their access and their validity in society goes even deeper. I'm going to show you a few more pictures that really make me think about how uglification has shown up. Google Chrome, here we go. Okay, great. How uglification has shown up in our society, in our history. For a good portion of our post-slavery period of time, and to so many extents today, these signs were everywhere. No niggers, no Jews, no dogs. It's complete and utter dehumanization. And again, it has everything to do with uglification. These groups were uglified in order to maintain white supremacy, in order to maintain white privilege, in order for most likely poorer white people to feel special, to feel like they have something better than and different than these other groups of people who are being uglified. It did another thing as well. When you see these signs everywhere, when you have these horrific legislations, it validates supremacy and superiority in your head. So it created a culture that like allowed people to think this is okay. This is normal. This is appropriate because we don't like these people. This dislike creates connection. We talk about trauma bonding. This is supremacy bonding, which really led to the development of the world we live in. And and it targeted so many different groups of people. This is also an old sign. We serve whites only, no Spanish, no Mexicans. We are seeing some horrific things today that have not shifted and have not changed from the ways that uglification was used historically in different parts of this country, where they have, citizenship checks, or you have to show your ID or your documentation. It's essentially the same thing. It's this fear, and historically there was even an intentional creation of fear of Mexican and Latino people who lived in the Southwest and Western parts of this country. It was used to justify the occupation of this land. It was used to justify manifest destiny. It was used to justify early mass deportation. Now, I'll be transparent. I am a big fan of marijuana. I like it. It makes me a better person. Everybody likes me better when I'm just a little bit stoned and I enjoy life more. But when I was a kid, I thought marijuana was the worst thing in the world. I stopped talking to certain friends because they started smoking weed. I stopped engaging with people who started talking about weed. I was like, it's the gateway drug. It's a sin. We're all gonna suffer. Marijuana craze. And then I started learning about the ways that I was taught to be afraid of marijuana. During this Mexican-American War, and shortly thereafter, a lot of people were using marijuana as medicine and healing. It was medicine. It is medicine. It was indigenous medicine, sacred to this land and other parts of this land. And the military, there was one specific officer, in order to validate and justify and get government's permission to deport people, he wrote a letter to the army and said that these Mexicans are smoking this drug, marijuana, and it makes them have superpowers. And when they smoke this, they get stronger and they can kill us so much easier. So we have to get rid of them, and we have to get rid of their weed. Y'all, since when did marijuana give anybody superpowers? Might make you a little bit more flirty, might make it easier to engage in your Netflix, thing. But no, it was a construct, a very intentional construct for a political purpose. This drug was uglified, and in the process of uglifying this drug, we uglified a whole group of people, and people that we kind of like link into it. We saw the same thing with heroin when it came to Black people in the United States, and marijuana today, and all of the people still incarcerated from weed drugs, while we have so many states and businesses that are making big money on the production and sale of marijuana. We saw it with opiates. The uglification of different opiates were used to literally create the Chinese Exclusion Act to get to not only deport people from this country, but to make agreements that a group of people could not come into this country. And when we painted them as vicious and violent and dangerous in order to validate this form of discrimination, there were these arguments and these ideas that Asian people during this period of time were going to literally destroy white Americans. You can see it here in this picture. It looks very similar, I think, to the way that we talk about other migrants, Latino migrants today. There's this fear that they're going to come over and take over, and we'll lose our heritage and we'll lose our culture. And it's been so uninterrupted that the same strategies of dehumanization and of uglifying groups of people still exist so overtly in our political strategies, in the ways that we see each other. And the uglification is not just about, again, how someone looks. It's making them monsters. It's making them villains so that we can have a political propaganda, so that we can have a cultural identity. So uglification is this thing that is constantly used to validate systemic oppression. And not only validating systemic oppression, my friends, to validate the actual and literal creation of this country. Here we have like this picture, this painting, this quote unquote historic painting that is pure propaganda. Teach people to fear indigenous people because they will kill your women. They will assault and attack your women. And in it, it objectifies not only the woman who's being abused in this picture, white women, but it's really, really playing with people's heads and teaching them so clearly to be afraid so that this power can continue. We see it, and it continues. This is a very, very, very recent photo. This is a cartoon that was created of Serena Williams. And the cartoon was so overtly uglifying her, playing with these racial stereotypes, playing with comments about size, playing with comments about hair, playing with comments about anger and irrationality, these stereotypes that are already ascribed to Black women, in order to validate the argument that she's not welcome in the tennis realm, that she's not sophisticated enough or beautiful enough or capable enough to be in this place. And what it does is not only protect this space as being predominantly white, it also is coming for Serena's dividends. It's interrupting her ability to access or make more money. And, I'm sure she has a lot of money, but uglification does this beyond sports or beyond famous people. Do you all remember that store, Abercrombie and Fitch? Abercrombie and Fitch was a clothing store. I'm not sure if it still exists, if it went out of business or not. But the founder and the CEO for a period of time was very clear and very overt about the fact that Abercrombie and Fitch was not a place for quote unquote ugly people. He did not want ugly people working there. He did not want ugly people shopping there, these people that he defines as ugly. And part of how he created this construct of ugly, I think, was also in size, by making women's clothes so small so that a good portion of our society could not fit it. So it's this act of exclusion that we're connecting to uglification and validating, and also this act of creating a privileged group, creating a group that we do recognize as beautiful, that we do recognize as valid, that we do think are welcome into our society, and kind of teaching us to aspire to that group. For example, if we can access that group, if we can be a part of that group, if we can aspire to that group, if we aspire to this ideal that so many of us can't partake in, it turns that ideal into something special, something that we perceive as leadership, which really brings me back to the story of this man who chose to uglify me. He leaned into patriarchal power. I literally and overtly saw what patriarchal power looked like, because he had the authority to decide who could come and who couldn't. He had the authority to decide who was beautiful. He trusted himself. And the women who liked that comment, or who liked the status and who participated in the comment, were agreeing with him. And even if they did not actually believe that I was ugly or that I shouldn't be welcome, it served a purpose again. The purpose was, at least I'm not her. At least I'm not the one being made fun of. At least I'm not the one being excluded. Maybe that means I'm beautiful. Maybe that means I'm special. So again, uglification creates this special group and this oppressed group. This group that gets to have access to resources and hang out with rappers and drink fancy drinks and look down at the club. And then there are the people who are wishing they could get there and who are knowing that they are not welcome because of how uglification works and how uglification functions. So in this concept, or in this dynamic where uglification is an actual and literal oppression that serves actual and literal tools, that creates that is a tool and a weapon, we cannot make it just about self-esteem. We cannot make it just about somebody liking how they look. Now it's connected to it. It is 100% connected to self-esteem, and it's 100% connected to how we feel about ourselves. And again, we need to feel good about ourselves. It's rooted in our survival, literally rooted in our survival. And the thing that uglification does is it works to make us not feel good about ourselves. It works to make us think that we are not worthy of survival. We do not deserve survival. I spent so many years of my life praying for death, not because I hated myself, not even because I wanted to die, but because I wanted the opportunity to have a quality life, because I was tired of the pain that I was experiencing as a person who was being perceived as ugly. And examples of that pain were, being made fun of every day at school. In the 8th grade, I had kids throw pencils and rubber bands and erasers at me while they called me ugly. I had kids approach me to ask me, why do you look the way that you look? Why are you so dark? Why are you so fat? Why are your gums so pink? Why are your eyes so tight? Why is your forehead so big? Why are you so damn ugly? And it comes from somewhere. It served a purpose, but it serves this colonial purpose, but it also kind of almost stole my life. It kind of almost made me not want to live and not want to exist. And that is a tragedy that any person blessed with the opportunity to enjoy this beautiful earth that we live on, and all the delicious foods we can eat, and marijuana we can smoke, and people we can fall in love with, can think that they're not worthy, or can think that they cannot access that because of how we allow this systemic oppression to play out. Because instead of thinking about uglification as systemic oppression, we blame ourselves. And the result, and I'm someone who survived because I had the baddest, most dynamic mama in the whole world, who worked her ass off to keep me alive, who would take time away from work to take me to therapy and to take me to participate in theater club and to remind me that I was worthy and valuable and loved exactly who I am, as I am. And some people don't have that. When you are someone whose parents needs to work an excessive amount of hours because of classism and capitalism and poverty, they're not there to take care of you in that way. When your parents are undocumented and they have to work crazy hours that hurt their own bodies and hurt their own mental health because of our xenophobic laws, you don't get that kind of protection. When your parent has swallowed the Kool-Aid that ugliness is real and that looks validate how we get access to the world, you don't have that kind of protection. And for some of us, it's caused so much devastation. This sweet, sweet child killed herself at 13, and I have her name. I feel like I can't just say her name, say this sweet, sweet child. Where are my notes? They are here. Okay, great. So this baby's name is Rosalie Avila. And Rosalie, her family walked into her house, trigger warning, I should have gave it earlier. Her family walked into her bedroom to find her hanging from a rope and to find apology letters for being ugly, to find apology letters for not being beautiful enough. She was being targeted by children at her school daily because of the way that she looked. And when I saw that status that Sean, that man, posted about me, I immediately thought about the people who do not survive because of how the world treats them based on how they look. There's another little girl that I really want to share, whose story really, really touched my heart. And I think it's so critical. Where are you? Not this dude, ignore this dude. We don't like him. But this baby girl right here. Oh, that sweet little itty bitty face. She was 9 years old. She was 9 years old when she chose to end her life, because again, she was being called ugly by her peers, because again, she was made to feel excluded, because again, she wasn't welcomed and involved in her community because of how the world treated her. And the thing about this that really kind of gets with me is that we have so many self-love movements. We have so many sorts of campaigns around loving your body and liking yourself, and so much access to therapy and theory around self-esteem. And I think to some extent it saves lives, but to another extent, when the focus, when the impetus is on us liking ourselves rather than changing a society that severely hurts people in this way and excludes people in this way, we're not actually making change. What we're doing, just a little bit, is victim blaming people and gaslighting people. We're telling people, if you love yourself, you'll just see that it's sticks and stones and you won't be hurt. If you like yourself, you can be strong enough to ignore these voices. But the way that we experience the world impacts our bodies. These things are microaggressions, macroaggressions, if you want to think about it, and microaggressions have a devastating impact. They lead to stress. they lead to post-traumatic stress disorders. Post-traumatic stress disorder kills people. It creates depression. It creates anxiety. It creates physical ailments, somatic ailments like headaches and stomach aches. There's studies right now that are exploring the relationship between post-traumatic stress disorder in Black women and diseases like diabetes and hypertension and cardiac arrest or heart attacks and strokes. And as a Black woman, this is critical to me because right now, internally, Black women are aging, not on our faces, but in our bodies, faster than everyone else. We are 30% more likely to die from stress. What does this mean when we live in a world that so intensely uglifies us and creates beauty by making us the opposite of beauty? And how it doesn't just affect us. Uglification is a thing that impacts every single person with a body. Even if you fit into a quote unquote privileged group, there is still the threat of being ugly as you age or as your body changes, or if something happens like an accident or you get hurt, or even this concept that like you, because you look a certain way or you're beautiful, you only have access to careers that depend on your beauty. I have frequently seen people say, oh, honey, you are too cute to dress like that. Or you're so cute, you could be a model. What if she don't want to be a model? Not all of us want those careers. Not all of us need to depend or rely on beauty in order to like have a sense of purpose in the world. But that's what uglification does. It says that people who look a certain way have a purpose and the rest of us are unnecessary. And it goes back historically. Ancient Greece and ancient Rome, they had a habit when the weather was not working and the land wasn't bearing fruit, they had a habit of sacrificing the people in their communities and towns that they perceived to be the most ugly. And the people that they perceived to be ugly were old people and disabled people. And usually as we age, our bodies become more disabled. So it's this clear intent idea of, you know, when you look a certain way, when your body functions a certain way, you are not worthy. You are not welcome. Your life is not necessary. We can discard you. And of course, when these ideas have been a part of our society for so long and our culture for so long, it's so easy to see why little babies might think their lives are not valuable. They don't get to be here. They're not important. It's also easy to see why we are able to harbor so much prejudice as a society. Oh, somebody else is sharing the screen. Cronenberger? What's happening here?
This is very strange. Whose screen is that?
I think she's not noticing that she's doing it. Maybe
okay.
you can disconnect her and then connect her again, because I don't think she's noticing.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It's Cronenberg.
I see. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, okay. There. I think she stopped.
Oh, great. Okay, so I'm going to share some stuff. You know, so it not only do we start thinking about who's this uglification engaging with the ways that we perceive ourselves, but it also really starts to inform legislation and our civic experience of the world. I think of this woman, Tatiana Jefferson. She was a mother who was dealing with some mental health struggles at the time, and somebody called to do a welfare check on her, which is, I'm just gonna not go too far into it and say, research in your neighborhoods and community to see if there are other options, because the police kill people. And a lot of times the people killed by the police are Black people and brown people. And this is a result of the ways that we've been uglified historically and in our society. You know, so here this woman is struggling and dealing with like a mental health crisis. And because uglification is also rooted in disability, in ableism, you know, it was easy for the police to turn her struggle or her crisis into something that was dangerous and that was that validated her murder, her slaughter, her killing in front of her children. This is this thing that uglification does that is so deeply systemic. It's so ingrained in our culture that we have a president who was able to get elected.
You call women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account.
Only Rosie O'Donnell.
How is that funny? The audience goes on to laugh.
For the record, it was well beyond Rosie O'Donnell.
Yes, I'm sure.
Your Twitter account has.
That was Donald Trump.
Oh, I didn't choose the clip where the audience is laughing so hard, thinking that it's okay for this person to call people these names or to say that somebody, a specific person, a specific person was worthy of these names. For what reason? Because they spoke out, because of how they look. It's horrific. And it's not just limited to the president. It's when we listen to the radio. So we're being told that you get access to love and affection and connection if you can lose weight, if you can be attractive by men, by the patriarchy. And it's not just limited to these men that we don't like, because we kind of culturally don't like Kanye West and Donald Trump. But what about the people that we do like, the people we do respect?
Can you turn it up a little bit, Vanessa, on your end?
All women of every race can be beautiful. Yeah. And I know some of you are sitting there now going, oh, Trevor, yeah, but I've never seen a beautiful Aborigine. Yeah, but you know what you say? You say yet. That's what you say. Yet. Because you haven't seen all of them, right? And plus, it's not always about looks. Yeah. Maybe Aborigine women do special things. Yes. Maybe they'll just like jump on top of you and just be like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
So I chose this image of this video of Trevor Noah because I didn't even know this happened until I started researching ugliness in this way. But also Trevor Noah is a man that so many of us like really appreciate and respect when it comes to like social justice community and liberation movements. He's positioned himself as an outspoken advocate. And yet, even the men that or people that we trust and that we love and that we appreciate lean into this notion of uglifying people. People are experiencing this uglification from everywhere, from the political realm, from the media, from comedy, from our families, from our loved ones. Of course it turns into a microaggression. Of course it takes over our lives and worlds. Of course it informs the way that we think about our body. There is literally no escaping it, no matter how hard we work when it comes to self-esteem. We need, I think the only way to eradicate the impact of uglification is to think about it fully and wholly as a systemic issue. Let's go back to this man.
Have Mexico pay for that war. They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime. They are not our friend, believe me.
So simple. so stop share. So simple. There's nothing intelligent about it. There's nothing about it that is rooted in any substance. But because we've been so socially conditioned to uglify people in order to feel like we are special or to feel like we are valid or worthy, we copped into it. So not all of us, I'm sure none of y'all did, but your cousin might have, your auntie, your parent, your friend, your partner, your neighbor might have. And it comes from somewhere. It comes from from how conditioned we've been to participate and engage in systems of oppression. And it impacts our lives in other ways, this uglification. It tells us who has access to protection and safety, which neighborhoods are the most policed and hurt by the police, which neighborhoods are pretty pristine and pretty protected. Who gets access to love and nurture? There is a study, we have 30 minutes left. Okay, I'm going to hurry up. There's all these studies that show that children, babies, infants, toddlers who are perceived to be less attractive by others are less likely to live because they are touched less, they are held less, they're even looked at less, and eye contact is critical. People who are going through courts, the more physically attractive you are, the less likely you are to get sentenced. And I don't know if you remember, what was it, Prison Bay a while ago. Prison Bay was a man who the internet created a campaign to free, even though he had raped and stolen from so many women because of how he looks. Now he hangs out with Middle Eastern princesses on yachts. This is what beauty is telling us. When I went to the doctor to get a pap smear in my early 20s, while this doctor had a speculum inside of me, she was talking to me about weight loss surgery and telling me about how I would enjoy my life more if I was thinner. She didn't even talk to me about health. She told me stories about her daughter's dating life. This is how we engage with this concept of beauty. It's just so deeply invasive. There's a study of students who are perceived to be unattractive. They don't do as well academically. They're more likely to have behavioral problems. They're more likely to get in a lot of trouble. They're more likely to be arrested because their teachers are less likely to pay attention to them and to engage with them. So there are all these ways that we are being uglified in society. It is connected to white supremacy and colonization. It's connected to ageism. It's connected to ableism. It's connected to racism and xenophobia and fatphobia and homophobia and transphobia. So many trans women, and especially trans Black women, are being killed by cis men, and specifically cis Black men, because they have been uglified, because non-cis and non-hegemonic genders and non-binary genders are taught as to be something bad by some Western religions. And it leads people to think that it's okay to kill. There were laws in place that protected people's right to kill. They called it trans panic. You find somebody is trans, you panic, you kill them. We justified murder around uglification. Similar to the laws that I was talked about, we justified excluding people due to uglification. Uglification is a huge issue that needs to be addressed. And one of the ways that I am working to address it is through my Reclaim Ugly campaign. And Reclaim Ugly is this the goal of Reclaim Ugly is to eradicate people's fear of this idea of ugliness, to eradicate our stereotypes and assumptions about what ugliness is, to stop thinking about ugliness as a thing or a state of being or a description, and instead to think about ugliness as a thing that's being done to us, so that we can interrupt the doing and so that we can contemplate it as an act of interrupting that ugliness, as an act of liberation, which I think gives us a different kind of self-esteem, rather than thinking about, oh, I need to love myself even though I look this way. It's more like, oh, I love myself and I'm not gonna allow you to do this thing to me to serve this systemic purpose. Oh, I love myself, so I'm not going to do this thing to myself to serve a systemic purpose. It's thinking, oh, I believe in liberation. I believe in social and transformative justice. I believe in people's rights to live. And when I engage in uglification, when I think about people through the binary of beauty and ugly, I am participating in murder. I am participating in systems and legacies of oppression that has caused vast harm and vast violence to society. You know, we have children who are living, who are separated from their families and living in ICE detention camps. Okay. I hear it, because of uglification. So really briefly, the term that the language that I use with Reclaim Ugly, it means to uplift, glorify, love yourself, as opposed to the patriarchy or the government or the laws or wealth or all these other systems that validate uglification. What does it mean when you make yourself instead of somebody else sitting on a, what is it called? Sitting on a pedestal, you are sitting on the pedestal. You are uplifting yourself the way some of us uplift God. You are seeing the divine in you. You are glorifying yourself in the face of it. And you are loving yourself by choosing not to partake in it. But more so with ugly, you're making a choice to not participate in anybody else's uglification in concrete, and I swear last minute, in concrete ways. You're choosing to not allow your workplace to discriminate against people based off of how they look, or what their size is, or how they articulate themselves. I can be just as intelligent speaking standard English as I am when I'm kicking it with my homies and talking, and there's no difference between what I'm offering. So it's really thinking about how we're interrupting systems of uglification in our everyday lives. Okay, so I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna let you guys ask questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Vanessa. It's incredible. I think it will be really nice if we have a bell before we continue with the questions, just to like taking everything that we hear from you.
Okay.